In our national lead, from Sunday school to public school, today the Texas State Board of Education approved a proposal requiring more than 5 million public school students in Texas to study Christian Bible stories in their public school classrooms, amplifying a conservative effort to weave Christian teachings into U.S. public education. The proposed curriculum requires specific Bible translations drawn from Protestant Bibles, one reason some Catholics are objecting. CNN's Ed Lavandera is live in Dallas with the latest. Ed?
Well, Jake, this was a very controversial vote. After hours and hours of testimony throughout the week, the Texas State Board of Education heard from hundreds of people. They voted largely along party lines. The State Board of Education heavily controlled by conservative Republicans. They voted mostly along those lines to approve this new curriculum, which many education experts say no other state in the country has adopted. But it essentially it requires some biblical teachings at every grade level, from kindergarten to 12th grade, for more than 5 million public school students across the state of Texas. Supporters say that this is needed to help teach the role of U.S. history in its proper context and the role that Christianity played in all of that. Critics say that this is simply a violation of the doctrine of separation of church and state, and that it also goes to great lengths to avoid and exclude the teachings of non-Protestant Christians as well as non-Christians like Jews and Muslims. But there was one Republican who voted with Democrats against this curriculum, and this is what she had to say about the vote.
Teachers need to have their autonomy. They've been selecting books for decades, for years. This is nothing new. This is not a new concept to teachers. We are simply giving them a mandated list, which I believe is unconstitutional, but regardless of what I believe, let's not take their autonomy away.
And Jake, this curriculum will not be implemented immediately. It will be phased in over time, but beginning at the early grades, starting in 2030, and then higher grades in the years after that.
Now, this begs a question. What do you think? Did the school overstep its boundary? Did the Texas School Board overstep its boundary? Now children are going to have to listen to religious zealots talk about religion and the Bible in public schools. What's next? Religious zealots reading the Quran? What's next? Religious zealots reading the Talmud? This is insanity in America. So you just watched this video. Tell me what you think.
Oh, I'm sorry, I see that Texas here is going to require that public school children read Bible stories about me. So you mean like the Good Samaritan, where I say that the true neighbor is the outsider that showed mercy, not the religious people who walk past people suffering? Or, like I was a stranger and you welcomed me. Like when I say that caring for the sick, feeding the hungry, visiting the prisoner, and welcoming strangers is the same as serving me? Or maybe like the rich young ruler. I tell the rich young man to sell all of his possessions and give them to the poor, warning that wealth can keep people from God, my dad. Or when I flipped that money changers table, where I angrily told people not to use religion or sacred spaces to profit off of others. Or maybe it's like when I touched and healed lepers. I moved towards people that society feared and tried to cast out, and I treated them like human beings instead of like untouchables. Or was it like when I rebuked the religious elites and I condemned leaders who obsessed over rules and appearances while they neglect justice, mercy, and compassion? Those are the stories, Texas, that you're going to tell the children. Right? Just like one more thought, maybe you should think about passing gun reform laws to make schools safer. Kids can't read if they're not alive, and 10% of all school shootings happen in the state of Texas. Now go yeehaw and teach those kids who I really was, and stop using AI images of me touching Donald Trump. Okay, bye.
No, come on, bring your asses in here because I got some news for your ass. Texas and all my Texans parents who have children in school, did you know that Texas education officials have now voted that mandatory Bible reading should take place in the school? Did you know? You didn't know? Hold on. Because y'all know I'm going to look it up. I seen it on my timeline this morning. And I was like, well, I'll be damned. So now y'all bringing back church and state, which y'all said it was separate, but now y'all running it back. Okay. Texas public schools will require students to read the Bible stories under a reading list approved by the state's education board yesterday, widening conservatives' efforts to bring more Christian teachings into U.S. classrooms. Know what the fuck they're doing are bringing in more indoctrinated children to be under the spell of the Bible, to be coerced into learning Christian ways. Because they didn't say you had to read the Quran. They didn't say you had to read any other religious book. They said the Bible. Hold on, there's more. Under the mandate, more than 5 million public school students in Texas must read traditional literary works such as E.B. White's Charlotte's Web, I read that, and Charles Dickens' Great Expectations, didn't read that. They'll also be required to read Bible stories, including passages from the New Testament and excerpts from the Book of Job. The rollout will be staggered, starting with elementary school students in 2030. With the babies! The babies finna read. Okay, alright. Here's the kicker. Supporters say Judeo-Christian traditions were fundamental to the nation's founding and that should be reflected in public school curriculum. Well, ain't that a bitch? The same book that had people enslaved, the same people that still got y'all enslaved, are now saying we need new slaves. Baby, if you don't see what I'm seeing and you don't get what I'm getting, this page ain't for you. Y'all want to know what else they say? Hold on, because I'm not done. One of the critics, Elva Mendoza, said kids of all faith backgrounds and no faith are served by Texas schools and they should all feel welcome. Yeah, they should, but you in Texas. In Texas. Some people have applauded the possibility of mandated Christian religious reading in public books. Brooke Mazzell, a retiree from Lubbock, encouraged the board to adopt biblical material, saying her children and grandchildren grew up with strong faith and family values. Ain't that a bitch? But let's go back. A state law passed in 2023 in Texas required a mandatory list of at least one literary work be taught at each grade level. The proposed new list contains around 200 texts, including Bible passages, essays, and books, far in excess of that requirement. All right, let's keep going, because this just gets better and better. What they're saying, how they're going to indoctrinate your children now, and from elementary on up, is that picture book stories for elementary students, including David and Goliath and Daniel and Lion's Den, are on the required reading list, and by 4th grade, students should encounter passages about Jesus in the New Testament. By middle school, students will be expected to read several passages about Jesus, including passages from his most famous sermon and another where he instructs people to cast aside earthly anxiety and seek the kingdom of God. And let's not leave out the high schoolers. The list requires the reading of specific Bible passages as supportive materials for literary works, including works by Dickens and Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. It's crazy how they want to keep giving your fucking children the same thing they gave our children, they gave us, they gave our parents, the same shit. But yet they ban books about the truth. They ban books about slavery. They ban books about any fictional or non-fictional work that come from a black author who talks about the struggle, who talks about how we're still struggling, and who also talks about how they use this Bible against you. Ain't that a bitch? I can't make this shit up.
So for all the Republicans that are happy about Texas bringing the Bible back into the school, what the fuck y'all gonna do with the kids that don't believe in the Bible? What are y'all gonna do with the kids who are of another religion? Are y'all gonna force those children to learn about Christianity too? Or does their teachings get to get taught along with Christianity? I'm asking because I don't think a Buddhist or atheist parent would be okay with this shit. I don't. I feel like y'all bringing the Bible into the schools just killed education. Public education is dead in Texas, okay? It's about to drop below, way below, because the teachings are not going to be real. It's going to be indoctrination. It's going to be a cult. I was raised Catholic, okay? I switched over to Pentecostal when I was 15. I'm now spiritual, and I didn't learn none of that shit in school. I went to Bible school, Sunday school, okay? I learned that in Sunday school. I learned my teachings in church. It's supposed to be a fucking separation. This shit, I hope y'all got a lawsuit coming, because these white Christian nationalists, they are trying to indoctrinate your children. And any parent that has a child of a different religion, y'all need to get together and y'all need to sue the fuck out of Texas.
Back with more simple concepts that people make complex for no reason. I went to a Catholic private school. So when we had religion class, or when they made us go to mass, or when we had to memorize the rosary and saints and sacraments and shit, how could I complain about that? I went to a Catholic private school. Duh. there's logic behind that, right? But when we talk about public schools, what the fuck do you mean Texas public schools put the 10 commandments that is specific and applies to the Christian religion? They put this in all of Texas public schools, and now they're trying to make it mandatory for students that attend Texas public schools to read the Bible. Meaning that if your family and you yourself practices a different religion in America that's supposedly the bastion of fucking freedom, then too bad. You have to read the Bible, which is specific to and applies to the Christian faith, teaches Christianity. Do you see how that doesn't make any fucking sense? Do you see the lack of logic here? I guess I'll put it this way. Did you know that forcing something on somebody doesn't increase their inclination or motivation to accept whatever it is you're forcing on them goddamn selves? So when y'all try to force Christianity down people's throat, when you try to call this a Christian nation, even though the Constitution clearly states a separation between church and state, do I need to bring up the beef between the current Pope and Donald Trump him fucking self? Donald Trump is one of the fakest fucking Christians that walks this earth right now. Do y'all not understand that trying to force your religion that you don't even adequately practice is so fucking crazy? Do you genuinely believe that forcing students to read the Bible while they're at a fucking public school is going to make them grow up and be like, hell yeah, I definitely want to be a Christian now? It doesn't increase the fucking Christian membership at all. It doesn't do that at fucking all. You know what? Let's put it this way. How many active Christian nationalists, every time they get a chance to spew their fucking nonsense into a microphone in front of a camera on a stage, whatever, how many of them are on their second, third, fourth wife? How many of them have children with multiple women? How many of them did the adult dance before they were married? How many of them have been blackout drunk before, when gluttony is a defined sin in the Bible? You don't think that students who are forced to read the Bible are going to look at the actions of adult Christians and use their critical thinking to say, hey, you're not practicing what you preach? Forcing public school students to read the Bible is batshit crazy. Full sin. Come back for more ridiculous news in the United States.
Hey, you guys. Well, Texas will be the first state to implement Bible readings. Okay, they want students to learn about what founded America and what made America. Okay, and they think Texas will influence other states to bring in the Bible to read. June 26th, that Friday, an overwhelmingly Republican educational board said yes, Bibles will be read in Texas schools statewide, no matter what. So the list will include 200 texts, books, essays, and Bible passages that will be in the classroom starting 2020-30 school year. Texas lawmakers have approved optional Bible-infused curriculum, allowing schools to hire chaplains to counsel students in the public classroom. And it's mandatory to display the 10 Commandments in the class. But I read a couple of articles and they said that they have to hire chaplains because of the optional Bible reading curriculum. So the U.S. Supreme Court says that the Bible may be taught for literacy and historical purposes in public schools, but it cannot be a devotional Bible reading. It is literature purpose, not worship. Parables from the New Testament, I don't know why they said the New Testament, Job, Genesis. That's the Old Testament, not the New Testament. Maybe they got that wrong. So I found uh, a list of what they're going to read. So David and Goliath is for second graders. That's in the book of Samuel. The parable of the prodigal son and the eight beatitudes. That's for elementary school. I never heard of the eight beatitudes or the prodigal son, but they say it's in there. I read the Bible from the cover to the back. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. So the fifth graders will be reading Exodus when Moses meets God as the burning bush and he says, "Let my people go." If you guys remember this movie from 1997, it's called The Prince of Egypt. The story is about Moses and how he gets he tells the Egyptian Pharaoh to let his people go because they were enslaved. And then he leads them into the wilderness or something because the Pharaoh just says, go, just go. And then Pharaoh's like, oh no, forget that. And he goes off and gets them and then he parts the Red Sea. So that's what the kids will be um, reading. And then the high schoolers will be reading the book of Genesis, the story of Adam and Eve, and the book of Lamentations. They say somewhere in there will be the book of Psalms and the book of Jonah in there. And like I said, Job. Yes, so the book of Jonah and the book of Psalms will be for the seventh graders. I think Psalms should be for high schoolers, honestly, because seventh graders, they're not going to comprehend Psalms. Because I'm reading the book of Psalms right now, and I'm an adult, and I still say, how is King David comparing God to like a spoiled princess? That just flew right over my head, So I think that one should be for high schoolers. So now, oh, third graders. Third graders are required to read a picture book about Daniel. hmm hmm So now people are outraged about this because people say that it breaches between church and state and constitutional separation because in the Constitution there's church and state. They divided it because I guess people were running around being religious freaks back then. And it lacks diversity and it gives preference to Christianity. Well, yeah, nobody wants to hear about the Muslims or the Catholics or anything like that. And most people in the United States are raised Catholic. And so, like I said in the beginning, other people are happy that they're going to learn about the Bible and how it was founded and what led to slavery being demolished and how we marched for civil rights and whatever they were talking about in the article. They were happy about this, but in my opinion, I think it's great that they're bringing the Bibles back in school, but it's just been so long, they might as well just keep it out because we have so many other religions now that it just doesn't make any sense to just have Christianity. If you're going to have Christianity, you might as well have everything else in the school curriculum. And like one article said, it would bring lawsuits. Lawsuits. But I like it. But leave your comment down below. Do you think Texas is doing a really good thing about bringing the Bible back into the school? But hell, what do I know? I'm just a talking head.
Well, well, well. What in the actual hell do we have right here? Before you read this headline and it causes you a bit of discomfort and fear, just know this is another play from the Christian nationalists in the US of A that's going to backfire in their face. Yes. Texas public school students may soon be required to read the Bible. Texas is set to pass what may be the first state-mandated book list for public school students. It focuses on classic literature and includes Bible excerpts. You see how it said Bible excerpts and not the entire book? Why do you think that Christian nationalists and the Republican crew in Texas wouldn't want your children at public school reading the entirety of the Holy Bible? I don't know, maybe some critical thinking would be at play inside of a school setting and not underneath that steeple. You see, when you take your children to that church underneath that steeple, they don't understand what they read. They're waiting for the preacher to tell them what has been seen. But inside of a public school classroom, your preacher's not there to indoctrinate them, boo. There's going to be questions at play, and they're going to want answers. Expeditiously, aren't they? Maybe that's why they only want them to read excerpts of that little Holy Bible, right? I can't wait for this to backfire in their face. I cannot wait for this to backfire in their face. Children love to ask questions. In case you don't know, who, what, when, where, why? Yes. So don't get too angry about this. I have a feeling it's not going to go far. And once it does, and children have questions they won't answer it right away, and the answers don't make sense, they're less keen to grow up to believe in fairy tales and bullshit, honey. Yeah. Tomorrow's FAFO Friday, and I've already got a few lined up for you. It's going to be fabulous, by the way. Get ready to eviscerate the Red Hat crew, more specifically, the Maha Moms, boo. Yeah. They thought they were throwing their vote the way of the pedo elite, and they were only gonna rock the cradle and not rob it, baby. How foolish can they possibly be? Anyway, yeah, don't worry about this. It will backfire in their face. Absolutely, dear. Absolutely. And I know this for a fact today because I didn't learn the Holy Bible inside of a church. no. So my critical thinking was intact. No indoctrination was at play, and I could see the bullshit right there in front of my face. Anyway, we're gonna be okay. We're gonna be okay. This is their last-ditch effort to indoctrinate our children since little not-so-weeping widow Erica Kirk. Well, have you seen clips from her latest show? Yeah, they screaming at that hoe that she protects pedos. So, yeah. Anyway, it's time for me to get in here and cook supper, dear. I'll see y'all tomorrow with more tea in the brew. We're gonna point out their stupidity right in their face. And then we're gonna point and laugh. Because soon we're gonna be running this place.
I think it's a great idea that the Texas Board of Education decided that they need to start incorporating the Bible into the Texas school system with the 5 million students. And I think the best person to start doing this, to read stories, and I got some suggested stories to read, should be Ken Paxton, Texas's Attorney General. He's such a fine Christian, and he's running for the U.S. Senate to represent Texas. So here's some suggested stories that I think Ken Paxton should talk about, and he can relate to these personally from his life experiences. First story I think Ken Paxton should talk about is adultery and lusting. There in the Bible we have King David and Bathsheba, and King David, he lusted after Uriah's wife Bathsheba, and he saw her bathing and he wanted to do what. So we're on social media, can't say all that stuff. So he ends up having her husband Uriah go to the battlefront, and so that he could become unalived after they had done the what, and she became pregnant. So to make sure nobody found out about it, he has them go to the front line where he ends up becoming unalived. Only David and Bathsheba and God knew what happened. I think that's a great story. I think Ken Paxton could definitely relate and use his personal experiences maybe to talk about that from his knowledge of the Bible. There are a lot of scriptures and verses talking about protecting children and how children are sacred. And I think here's this story that Ken Paxton could use too. Since Ken Paxton, with Adam Hoffman, is really familiar with children and the plights and difficulties that they have in life. Yep, Adam Hoffman, you know who I'm talking about, right? Yes, Jesus placed a child in the center of the disciples and warned them that anyone who causes a child to stumble or harms him faces severe judgment. They might as well tie a millstone around their neck and jump into the water. Ken, you could talk all about that one, couldn't you? You really, really could, I think. You would be another good one to talk about that. And lastly, one more suggestion. The Bible has a lot about things that are stolen blessings, about embezzlement, about looted goods and other things. Ken, I think's experience and knowledge about that, certainly as Attorney General, would be excellent to do that. The one we probably could talk about is Jacob and Esau. Certainly you could talk about that, how the blessings were stolen there and how that was wrong. And then Micah and his mother, where Micah stole her 1,100 pieces of silver. And she ends up curses the silver. And she's so angry about it. And then he ends up confessing that he had stolen the silver. And then she tries to reverse the curse because it was her son that stole the silver. I think, Ken, I think you would be a great storyteller in your life experiences, that you could definitely help these children in Texas about this. Sometimes it's not just showing them the right things to do, but to show children things they shouldn't do to make sure they don't make those same mistakes. And your experience in life, you've seen a lot, done a few things yourself. I think you'd be great. Texans, what do y'all think? Would he be a great one? I think he's such a fine Christian. There couldn't be a better example of a Christian, and certainly not that godlike James Tallarico. Oh my gosh, he's too much of a Christian. Oh, no. He's not done any of these other things that Ken Paxton has done. So I think Ken Paxton would be the logical choice. What do y'all think? Yes, Ken Paxton's Attorney General, all those Christian experiences, nobody would be better than him to do this.
It's official. Christianity is the most insufferable, forced upon you religion ever made. Starting in 2030, all public school students in Texas will be required to read passages from the Bible in class. These same people that want to control you with religion are mad that the youth more and more are not going to religion. It started when millennials were like, we are not going to church. And then Gen Z doubled down on that. We're not going to church either. So now these religious people see They're about to have 3 generations of people that do not go to church or value the church. And they're like, no, we have to force our will upon people. So if you have a kid in the state of Texas, even if you aren't religious, even if you're Muslim or something else, you are going to have to read the Bible now. And it's like, I know religion is good for the community aspect of it, but I can't respect any religion that has to force their will upon others to try and convert them or get them on board. If your religion and everything was so good, you wouldn't have to do things like this to get people on board. They would want to join. But you are mad that the okie doke is up. Most people see churches as a scam. Most people don't want to give 10% of their money to a church. Most people don't want to spend their Sundays around fake ass people. And now they're trying to force it upon children, the most impressionable stages of your life, to try and get these people on board. It's disgusting. It just goes to show Christianity is insufferable, and don't nobody want to tolerate that shit.
So since the Texas Department of Education decided to make Bible reading mandatory, we gonna start taxing the churches in Texas now? Now, before we get into it, make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe, follow, do all things. I'm going to talk about issue over time, but let's get into it. So Texas Board of Education on Friday approved a required reading list, and part of that reading list is Bible stories are going to be mandatory to be read in public school. And my issue is, since y'all don't want to separate church and state anymore, y'all prepare to be taxed? Because why are Bible verses being put into schools? So y'all are bringing church into schools. So now, since there's no separation, we should be taxing churches, right? First and foremost, I feel like this is going to get shot down, because I feel like there's going to be lawsuits brought. Because how are you going to force Muslim children to read Bible verses? How are you going to force children that may be atheist families to read Bible verses? Like, you can't make everybody conform to one religion. And I know that this is what these Republicans, these Christian nationalists want to do, act like there's no other religion besides their religion. But you just cannot do that. That it's like illegal to sit up here and force Muslim children to read a Bible. So that alone is going to bring lawsuits. So they continue to do these things thinking that they just are going to pass it through, and they're going to be sued for this. So why are we wasting people's time? Like, you're wasting taxpayer dollars and time doing shit like this to try to push an agenda and indoctrinate children, when more than likely this will be shut down. Because I can't imagine that all the other religious groups that are not Christian based are not going to literally say, wait a minute, you're forcing children, Muslim children, Buddhist children, or anybody who has any other religion to read Bible stories that's against their religion. It's not going to fly. But they continue to do this shit. And I'm just so tired of these folks being in positions of power and BSing and trying to control people's lives. Y'all don't want certain books in school because you don't want children to be indoctrinated to that. But Bible stories are okay to indoctrinate. And then you got Black Christians in Texas all excited about this. A lot of y'all need to decolonize your minds and really, really read some real books and learn some history, because this is absolutely ridiculous.